how's it going? My name's Nico, I go by COINTrick and cointricktwitch online. If you want to see more videos like this one, please remember to like and subscribe. Hit that bell so you get notified every time I upload another one of these videos. Hey, how's it going? My name's Nico, I go by COINTrick and cointricktwitch online. We've been doing this series of 3-part videos where we teach you how to make and master classic cocktails, and then how to build up your bar around that classic cocktail style. Today, we're talking about the whiskey sour, and more in general, these 3 videos will be about egg white cocktails. So this 3-part process, basically, in the first part, which is the part that we're doing here, we teach you how to make and master the classic cocktail. Then how to make adjustments with those simple ingredients to really dial in the flavor and get it the way you want it, or the way that your guests want it if you're doing this at work. In part 2, I show you some extra ingredients that you can go out and get and some substitutions for the ingredients that you already have, and then show you what more classic cocktails you can make if you just go out and get a few other things, and you can make and master those next. And then in part 3, we're gonna get weird, and I'm gonna show you how to make a signature cocktail in that original style that we cover in parts 1 and 2, and then some advanced techniques that you can use at home and at work to make sure that your drinks really do stand out. Quick note, there are 2 standard recipes for the whiskey sour. One, the classic traditional recipe incorporates egg whites, right? It has that layer of white at the top, it's that fluffy layer of foam. The second, which is, I wouldn't say it's more common, but you see this a lot at like higher volume bars, is just whiskey and sour mix, which is, it's a sour build whiskey based drink, but it is not technically a whiskey sour because a whiskey sour is its own classic drink. But the egg whites are optional. The one difference though is that if you don't have those egg whites there to encase those ingredients and soften some of those harsh flavors, it's gonna be a little bit more astringent, a little bit more acidic, and a little bit more sweet. Also, if you're afraid of the egg whites, or you just don't like egg whites, or maybe you're vegan or vegetarian or something like that, there are a couple of alternatives. Typically in the restaurant industry, we would use something called aquafaba. It's the liquid that your canned chickpeas come in. So you can find chickpeas at the grocery store, strain off that liquid, and you can shake that to make a vegan cocktail foam. You can also find like chemical, like edible foam online. You can find those components too. So what do we need to make the whiskey sour? You're gonna need whiskey, egg whites, lemon, and simple syrup. That's it as far as your ingredients go. There is a garnish. The garnish changes depending on who you ask, but you can use something as simple as Angostura bitters if you have it laying around. I'm gonna save that for last, and you'll see why. As far as your equipment, you're gonna need a set of shakers. This is a shake and drink. You're gonna need a jigger, a juicer, and a knife if you're doing fresh juice, and I actually would recommend getting something like a fine strainer just to make sure that you have a good, consistent foam, and that should be all of the equipment that you need. Your glassware is gonna be a rocks glass. All right, so let's get some ice in here. I'm gonna build up this cocktail, see how it turns out. All right, start with our sour build. Start with 2 ounces of your bourbon. Then slice up your lemon if you're doing some fresh juice. If you're doing 2 ounces of that original bourbon, I would say do 3/4 ounce to 1 ounce of this lemon juice. I'm gonna do 3/4 of an ounce for this recipe. And since I have my fine strainer here, I'll just strain out some of that pulp. And then whatever measurement you used for your lemon juice is gonna be the same measurement for your syrup. So this is gonna be 3/4 of an ounce. Now, the most important part, and granted, I only have enough eggs to record this video. So, separate your egg whites. If you're not comfortable doing this, then you can do what many chefs will do, and you can just literally crack it and pull the yolk out of the drink. I've seen some people do that. Do that if you're doing it at home. Don't do it if you're doing it at work. As always, when you're dealing with any sort of raw materials, unprocessed materials, especially raw meat, raw poultry, wash your hands. Keep everything sanitary. So, I have ice in here, but because this is an egg white drink, there is an extra step that is incredibly important. We're gonna dry shake this before we wet shake it, which means we're going to shake it without any of the ice or any of the other anything. It's just going to be the liquid ingredients shaken together, and what that will do is it will help fluff up and emulsify the egg whites and incorporate them into the other ingredients, so you get a better sort of foamy head on your cocktail at the end. So I'm going to grab a different large shaker, and we're going to shake it dry first. Thanks, Bar Chemistry, by the way, for the shaker. Appreciate it. So, because there's no ice, you can't really risk over diluting this or anything like that. Check out how foamy that is. Look at that. Since there's no ice, you can't really risk over diluting it, making it too cold, breaking up the ice chunks, making a drink that's too cloudy when you're dry shaking it. So the main point is to shake it as hard as you can to get that nice pillowy, fluffy egg white foam. Add it over your ice. Shake it again. All right. Transfer it over here. There's no ice in here. That's deliberate right now. You'll notice I didn't use the fine strainer for pouring it just now. That's because this strainer is so tightly wound, it doesn't always need a fine strainer, but the main difference that will make, there are larger bubbles on the surface of this drink, breaking up that sort of creamy top and not making it velvety and smooth the way you would like it. So, when you fine strain it, it removes some of those ice chunks. It softens the speed that the liquid travels down into the glass, and it removes those large bubbles that you don't want to break up the surface of your drink. Now, the top of the cocktail is velvety smooth. All right, so it looks great. It smells great. How does it taste? That's good. I think the 3/4 ounce was the right measure. It's good. And if you made this at home, maybe it's even great. This one's pretty great, but it's never gonna be perfect the first time you make it. So, how do you tell what is not perfect about your cocktail, right? How do you dial in those flavors individually to make sure that you're making it the way that you like it, or the way that your guests like it if you're doing it at work? Before I can make any kind of recommendation, I always try to remind everyone that all of the ingredients that you've ever seen in any cocktail only have 5 different roles that they can be performing in the cocktail. Some things will do multiples of these roles. Typically, each ingredient is only filling one role. You have liquor, lengthener, sweet, sour, and spice. So in this one, your liquor is obviously going to be your whiskey. I chose to use bourbon. Your sweetener is going to be your simple syrup. Your lengthener is the ice that you're shaking the cocktail with, and the egg whites also act as a lengthener because they do tease out and soften those harsh flavors. Your sour is going to be your lemon juice. And then as far as your spice component, you don't exactly have one, not yet. But like I mentioned before, your typical garnish would be some sort of Angostura bitter or something on top, something aromatic to give it, to break up the smell of the cocktail and give it more aromatic components. When you do that, that is your spice component, because that's what your spice component is meant to add. It's meant to add aroma. First things first, what can go wrong with your liquor? Well, typically, most cocktails, if there's something wrong with your base liquor, it is normally that your cocktail is too strong. In this instance, if you drink it, and especially if you made it with egg whites, if you drink it and you still get too much of the heat coming off of your whiskey, you probably need a little bit more syrup, a little bit more of this simple syrup. You can't really add more egg whites. Eggs don't really work that way. So you're gonna need to add a little bit of syrup to sort of soften the heat coming off of this, or you're gonna have to cool it down a little bit more, which is kind of hard to do. The second thing is your dilution, which typically means that your cocktail is too watery. Not really such thing as a cocktail that isn't watery enough. If your cocktail is too watery, the obvious thing to do is going to be to add more of that base liquor. Unless you feel like there's too much heat in the cocktail as well, then again, you're gonna wanna add some of this syrup to give it some body, tease out those flavors, make it last on your palate a little bit longer. The third thing is your sweetener. If your cocktail is too sweet, the best recommendation I have for you is gonna be to add a little bit more of that lemon juice. It's not gonna be exactly perfect because this egg white does make the cocktail not homogeneous. Basically, the whole cocktail doesn't share the same kind of composition top to bottom. So you're gonna wanna like reincorporate that lemon juice a little bit to really get that flavor to come across correctly. Now, obviously the last thing that you can do is you can add those bitters on top, that typical garnish. You can add something on top to give it some extra aroma, and sometimes that will also balance everything together, especially if you're using something like Angostura aromatic bitters. If you have a little dropper, it's a pretty cool trick you can do with these. You can drop little droplets right on top. Get 3 or 4. Then take something like a toothpick or a garnish fork, and you can run it along the top of the cocktail like you're making latte art, and that will turn them into little hearts, little clouds, little designs that you can put on top. Some places, when they have the egg white on top of their cocktail or the aquafaba, there's a stencil that they will use with a spray to get a design on top. Now that I've added some spice component, let's see how it tastes. I get a lot more aroma on this. Oh yeah. Having those scents and this is like lots of different sorts of like barks, like cinnamon, nutmeg, like just baking spices. Having those scents breaks up the intensity of everything underneath the egg whites. So that's why this works. But why did I choose an egg white cocktail? Why did I choose the whiskey sour? Well, predominantly, it's because I think many people are intimidated by egg whites in cocktails or any kind of foam cocktail for some reason. You shouldn't be able to taste the egg whites, and you shouldn't be able to smell the egg whites. So I think making a video like this will hopefully convince some of you to try this at home, or at least be a little bit more confident in ordering this when you go out. When you order your next whiskey sour, order it with the egg whites. So that's it for this video. In the next video, we're gonna do part 2. I'm gonna show you some extra ingredients that you can pick up, some substitutions you can use in this original recipe, and I'll show you some other drinks that you can make if you've picked up those extra bottles and begun building up your bar once you've mastered this drink. And then in the third part, we're gonna get weird. I'll show you how to make a signature egg white style cocktail and some advanced techniques that you can use at work or at home to make sure your drink stands out. Thanks for sticking around, and thanks for all of your help and support. Hopefully I've been helpful and supportive as well, since that's why we do everything that we do here. If you learned anything during this video, please like and subscribe and comment what drinks you want to learn how to make at home, and I'll see all of you in the next video.